Weekly Sceptic, episode 92. I'm Nick Dixon here with our man down under, Toby Young. Coming up, it's manifesto time, or contract time if you're Reform UK. Plus, Tony Blair comes out as a TERF. And of course, Peak Woke and the full extended podcast on basedmedia.org. But Toby, I should address the fact we are back remote. Doesn't mean we're not going to be in the studio anymore. It simply means you're across the other side of the world, or whatever it is, the upside down bit, in New Zealand. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm here at the bottom of the world in New Zealand, 12,000 miles away from where you are now. I'm here on a speaking tour organised by the New Zealand Free Speech Union, and then I'm going to Australia for a 2-week speaking tour in Australia organised by the Australian Free Speech Union. And on July 9th, we're launching the International Association of Free Speech Union. So I'm here on Free Speech Union business for about a month, which means this and the next 3 episodes will be recorded like this rather than in the studio. But I'm hoping I can still make it in spite of the time difference. And I'm 11 hours ahead of you at the moment, but that gets reduced, I think, to 9 hours ahead when I'm in Sydney in a couple of weeks' time.
And it's great for both of us because you're tired because you've been working all day. I'm tired because I have to get up earlier, then sit here waiting for you for about 52 minutes. And so it's working out really well, guys. But we are still bringing it to you. We've never missed one. Okay, we missed one once. But yeah, I think we're bringing it to you despite Toby's gallivanting. Wear sunscreen is my only tip, Toby, because I managed to get skin cancer when I was in Dubai, believing that sunscreen was bad for you. And I believed all those things, and I managed to get skin cancer. So wear sunscreen, wear a hat.
Oh, well, yeah. It's the middle of winter here. So actually, it has been. The weather's been quite nice. I'm currently in somewhere called Tauranga. There's a whole thing about how you pronounce words in New Zealand. You've got to pronounce them in the Maori way, or you look like a kind of racist dinosaur. And yes, I keep getting it wrong.
As a racist dinosaur. Yeah, well, all I know is you say, what are you, on your way to a deck meeting or something? They've got this weird, yes. Has anyone said yes to you? Yes.
There's I haven't found it that difficult to understand the locals. And I went to Hobbiton. I think I told you about it earlier. I went on a tour of the Hobbiton movie set, loving the Shire, lovingly recreated by Peter Jackson and his set designers. It was actually pretty impressive. I actually went into a hobbit hole and kind of sat on a kind of mini sofa.
Amazing. I do envy that. I would love to see that. I mean, I hate travel, but I would love to see all the Lord of the Rings stuff, all the Hobbit stuff. Okay. Well, sounds pretty cool. Yeah, I guess it is winter, but you still got to check the UV ratings. As everyone knows, this is a health-based podcast. So let's just quickly say, if you want the full episode, go to basedmedia.org, and it's £5 a month, which is about the price of half a posh ale now in London, something like that. So it's very cheap, £5 a month to get the full episode. And, you can pay a bit more if you want extra features like a Zoom call and so on. And you can get all my stuff at nickdixon.net. And we just had a great episode out with Connor Thompson that's doing very well. That's my Substack, nickdixon.net, with extended episodes of The Current Thing as well. And Toby, do you want to just quickly plug your stuff before we start?
Yeah, we've recently launched a whole bunch of new perks at the Daily Sceptic if you donate at least £5 a month or £50 a year. So we've launched a podcast called The Sceptic. I know you and I have our differences about
plus everyone else who's written to me about it
in the name between that podcast and this podcast. But you can get the premium content in that podcast if you subscribe if you donate £5 a month or £50 a year. In addition, we're now publishing one paywalled article per day on the Daily Sceptic. You get access to that too. We've set up a new Discord forum where you can talk to authors of articles, editors. So a whole bunch of perks now, not just being able to comment below the line if you become a donor, but also you get all these other benefits. So please do go to the Daily Sceptic, click on premium in the main menu, and you'll see all the benefits you'll get if you donate.
All right. So we just do the promotion at the start now because some of it is paywalled at the end. So hope you will bear with us and not mind that. And now we will crack on with what you're here for, which is the actual stories and the politics. And this week, it's very much about manifestos in this election campaign and contracts, because Reform UK refused to call it a manifesto because you wouldn't believe us. If we said it's a manifesto, no one does them. They're all lies. So we're calling it, that's sort of my half-baked Farage impression. So we're calling it a contract, they said, instead. And they've got some interesting stuff in there. They've got immigration, recognize security threat, freeze non-essential immigration. I would just say freeze the whole thing. And in brackets, welcome essential skills our economy needs, such as doctors and nurses. Deport foreign criminals. How about that? Stop illegal undocumented labour affecting British citizens. Saving $5 billion per year. And they've costed all these up sort of broadly. There's stuff on government waste, overpaid consultant contract, defence. They want to get up to 3%, I believe, which is pretty much just what it'll have to be soon if Trump keeps putting pressure on them. I can't see that in front of me, but I remember that from memory. They wanted a 3%. NHS is quite interesting. They want tax relief on 20% of all private healthcare, but they want frontline NHS and social care staff to pay zero basic rate tax for 3 years. It's quite a radical idea. I mean, it was Mr. Doctor, Sikora was is that the correct pronunciation? Anyway, he was saying that this could actually work. That this is a kind of radical policy we actually need for the NHS. Carol Sikora. Sorry, I'm just getting his name wrong. So that was quite interesting. And stop the war on motorists, increase farming budget to $3 billion, expand Navy overseas patrol, stop EU taking fish quotas. It wouldn't be Farage unless there was something about fish in there. Scrap net zero. That's a big one. And there's there's other stuff. There's other key points, but we can go into it. I mean, what was your main thing? Oh, one last one I'll mention was the income tax to start from £20,000. Helps poor people like me. What do you think, Toby?
Yeah, well, it's all very attractive. I particularly like, under the heading of education, introduce a patriotic curriculum in primary and secondary schools, ban transgender ideology in primary and secondaries, and tax relief of 20% on all independent education. That's it's like they're trolling the Labour Party there. Labour Party want to slap VAT on private school fees. Reform are going to give you tax relief on your if you're paying for independent school fees. And I quite like this. Welfare, enforce a 2-strike rule for job seekers with benefits withdrawn from people who repeatedly turn down work.
And they've been attacked on that. And people like Kay Burley were saying, well, was it Kay Burley? Someone was grilling one of them, saying, well, what are people supposed to do? And they're like, well, they've got to take work, haven't they? And that is true. I mean, if you were just not on benefits and you just turn down endless jobs, you would be in trouble, wouldn't you? I mean, so there's the way the sort of media are framing this is a bit sort of monstrous. I mean, it can be bad because the job centres are so badly run. They put some rubbish job in front of you and you have to take it. But in general, we obviously can't have a culture where you can just refuse to work and just expect to be bankrolled. But the media are pretending this is some sort of Victorian outrage.
Yeah, it's not a Victorian outrage. One interesting thing is that Reform's migration policy used to be net zero migration, one in, one out. But they've clearly gone further than that and now freeze all non-essential immigration. It's slightly different. And I guess the one in, one out isn't great because you can't, discriminate between people trying to get in. It would just be some sort of queuing system. One leaves, the first person in the queue gets in, and that's obviously not great. And you're not going to reduce migration overall that way either.
When I interviewed Ben Habib on The Current Thing, it was clear that he wasn't a favour of the phrase net zero immigration. It was a kind of phrase that Richard Tice has latched onto, but didn't really make much sense given that 400,000 to 600,000 might remigrate or emigrate. Therefore, net zero immigration could mean you're bringing in 600,000 people. So for the right, this was seen as nowhere near strict enough. Although the media, again, the mainstream media, saw even net zero immigration as an absurd fantasy. They were like, well, what are you going to do? I mean, we've got to fill these roles and blah, blah, skills. So they see even that as kind of, it's amazing how quickly you adapt. The media adapts to sort of the nonsense idea that, 600,000 is some sort of, makes you basically a fascist. That you don't want to let in 600,000 people in. This radical, unprecedented immigration. Then very quickly they move the goalpost to, what are you saying? How's it going to possibly work? It's like probably how it worked for every other year since 1066 until 2022, whatever. So it's just gaslighting bullshit. But Yeah, it was never strict enough that. So that Farage is always talking about a points-based system. He wants to do the Australian system. But for some reason, isn't it Tony Abbott's the only guy that's ever managed to crack immigration for some reason? You probably meet him.
I met him the other day. He was in London, and I wanted to try and... No, I was trying to line him up to chair a panel discussion following the launch of the International Association of Free Speech Unions, and he seemed up for it, actually. He said he wanted to know a bit more detail, who else was going to be on the panel, wasn't quite prepared to commit right there on the spot, having never met me before and knowing nothing about me, but was actually pretty friendly and obviously in favour of free speech, but very charismatic, impressive
very
guy.
Masculine. I'm amazed you didn't know who you were, Toby. That's appalling. Yeah, I mean...
I'm being self-deprecating, of course. Yeah, the famous Toby Young. Of course, I know who you are.
Yeah, I mean, and Farage has been clear that these are sort of campaign. These are what we're going to campaign on, because of course it's kind of meaningless. Most parties having a manifesto doesn't really. They're not going to be able to do any of it. But he's saying like this is what we're going to campaign on over the next 5 years. So it's more. It's not almost not really a manifesto. It's just the kind of these are the kind of things we're into that we're going to badger Starmer about. Not that it'll do anything necessarily, and that's the problem. Of course, will any of these things ever happen, or will it just be a brutal Labour dictatorship, which we can get into in a sec? I just want to say I'd vote for whichever party gets rid of these tethered bottle caps, which is EU bullshit. That I'm holding it up for people who are listening, but I'm holding up a tethered bottle cap. This is an EU bullshit thing that came in. I think it was written down in 2018. This would be the rule. It's only just come in as officially in the UK in 2024. And you'll be aware of it. I'm a bit behind on this. But I've been noticing for a while, like many people, the bottle caps don't work anymore. You have to rip them off, which you can easily do, but then you're left with like jagged bits of plastic. Or you have them attached and they just hit your face like a moron. And then they don't even necessarily seal properly because like, hang on, is that sealed? And it doesn't seal on a proper angle because of the attachment. So I soaked my football kit the other day because during the match, you're trying to very quickly get some water, put it down. I've never done that before in my life. Why? Because they've ruined the design of bottles. I mean, it's so anti-human and insane. I mean, you don't just get to ruin the design of the bottle. The water bottle is something it's evolved. It's a perfect design. You can't just, guess what? We've just stuck the plastic together now so that it looks like a factory defect. It's absolutely disgusting. So I've said clearly on my Twitter that I will vote for whoever gets rid of this, even if they're communist, as long as they get rid of this. And people have said to me, why can't you just drink a can of pop? I'm not drinking pop. Do you not listen to the Weekly Sceptic? I've stopped all Coke for 2 weeks. Why do you think I'm so angry? But I think I'm so tired and miserable. But I'm drinking bottled water because I'm not going to drink the London fluoride swill with all the endocrine disruptors and soy in it. So I'm going to drink bottled water. And I want it to fucking come off. I want the cap to come off like an adult. I mean, it's absolutely... Look at that. It's like I'm a child with my Calpol that I can't get into. Anyway... I'm voting for whoever gets rid of tethered bottle caps.
I think, what is the rationale behind the tethered bottles cap? Is it to stop people littering by being able to throw away the cap as well as the bottles separately? It's like better for the environment if you throw them both away together. It's meant
to be a single-use plastic, so it has to be. So by attaching the cap in this retarded way, it becomes single-use. But is that to do? It's something to do. Yeah. So they're not separately. I don't know, ending up in a dolphin's mouth or something. I don't quite get it, but it's some EU bollocks, and this is the only way they can get around it. And even though we shouldn't have to follow this because we're not in the EU, basically factories are not going to, as I understand it, factories are not going to have like a separate UK one with different bottle caps, so we're just going to end up with them anyway. And we left because of shit like this. This is why we left, and we're stuck with this EU bollocks. I want a proper light bulb, a normal water bottle, a plastic straw that functions. I don't want a fucking chocolate teapot, you unelected pricks. Anyway, sorry, I got quite wound up there. Sorry for the language.
I can see you're angry about it. But I hate those bottle tops too. And the thing which always annoys me is I always want to detach the top because, as you say, it's really hard to drink out of them if you don't detach the top. But if you detach the top when the bottle is full of water, you inevitably end up spilling water on yourself.
Exactly.
When
you almost have to open
off.
it in the more stupid way, drink a little bit, then rip the top off, and then have your jagged plastic. It's a kind of whole sequence. You constantly have to adapt and think. It's so miserable. It's designed to ruin life, make it miserable for no gain. It's not going to do anything. Nothing's going to be saved by this. And some people are saying they're deliberately now not recycling them in revenge. And it's just not going to... All it's going to do is make... The one thing we know it's going to do is make people miserable. That's all it's going to do. And that's probably what it's for, ultimately. And... they had those caps that work. There is a type of cap, isn't there, where you flick it and it's meant to be like that. You very rarely see them now, but you flick it and it kind of reconnects.
Yeah.
That is a type of cap.
Yeah.
So what they should do is just make them all that cap if they want to go single use.
Yeah.
Because that actually works. This doesn't work. It fundamentally doesn't work. All water bottles now across Europe do not work. That's how absurd it is. It's like having a car that doesn't have a left indicator or something. I mean, that's just the rule now.
Yeah, maybe it's deliberately intended to make it really awkward and inconvenient to buy water in plastic bottles as a way of trying to nudge you into having a kind of permanent bottle that you take to water fountains and fill up, because plastic bottles are bad
that is
for
almost
the environment.
certain. They want to make things more and more difficult that they don't like. Yes, exactly that. So they're saying, yeah, we're glad you hate the water bottle, Nick. You should have one, which should go back to the olden times. You should have one little jug or something that smells that you just take everywhere. And I mean, someone said that, and some people have written articles about it. One person said, "Yeah, I'll have to use my other water bottle that smells like a pond after 2 uses." I mean, it's disgusting. I don't have a bottle like that, but maybe I'll be forced into it. I don't know. I'm furious. So I'm voting for whoever gets rid of that. Sorry, that's taken a large chunk of the podcast.
I think Farage is probably your man for that. I think you could be persuaded to include that in the reform
honestly, a lot of people say, Nigel, we can't drink water. It's absurd. Yeah, maybe. I need to. I should be able to talk. I mean, I never see him anymore. But
by the way, have you seen that there was a video of Nigel Farage playing Minecraft and blowing up Keir Starmer's house? And it was like, I'd been told before the election, warned by countless kind of hand-wringing liberals that this was going to be the deep fake election. We weren't going to be able to tell what was real and what wasn't. And this was a huge scope for manipulation by bad actors and Russian bots and all the rest of it. And I thought that was just rubbish. I completely dismissed it and alarmist nonsense. But then when I saw this, I thought, crikey, is that real or not? Is it a deep fake, or is Nigel really trolling Keir Starmer with this fantastic
no, definitely
skit?
not real.
I mean,
I only watched the first few
seconds
because of my I've got 2024 attention span, but I'll watch that later. And but I could see already from the things he was saying, he was in Minecraft talking about blowing up. Yeah, it was completely fake. But he is out doing similar kind of he's doing those TikToks and the Eminem Guess Who's Back, and he's appealing to the youth. The other day, did you see him with that band? He's talking about a band called the Sun Rays. He was just meeting these young people. He's like, they're young, they're confident. They're the Sun Rays. Did you see that? Young people love him. The Zoomers just love him. No one else has anything like that.
But I thought he's definitely the TikTok king, isn't he? Looking at Dawn Butler's
so cringe.
kind of rap song, and Suella Braverman kind of strutting towards the camera as her kind of helpers kind of struck poses behind her. What do they call it? They cut shapes. That was just pretty embarrassing. But Starmer's Eminem thing, that was quite. I mean,
Farage is whenever he does it. But even though he's the same age or older, it shouldn't work, but it just does. He's got the Trump magic. Even if he does something silly with young people, even if he dances to YMCA like Trump, like Trump's dance, it just kind of, for some reason, it works. Whereas, like you say, Suella does it or Dawn Butler, it just immediately cringe. What is that? It's weird. It's the meme magic. No one can understand it.
It's partly confidence, isn't it? It's sort of not trying too hard. There's an element of kind of sending himself up when he does it. It's all a bit of a laugh. Whereas when they do it, it always feels incredibly cringe because they're trying so hard to look relaxed and kind of down with it.
And they just fundamentally have no charisma.
It's just awful when almost everybody else does it.
All right. Well, we should probably have talked more about the manifesto. We talked about bottle caps and Minecraft. But anyway, you get the idea. That's the reform contract. Now, Labour's one, I keep trying to read it. And obviously I should for the podcast, but I just immediately get totally bored because it's really boring. And it's meant to be boring because, they're the serious government. But also it's because they want to get through all sorts of things by the back door. So the things they're admitting to are, raising 8 billion, private school fees to pay for state school teachers, building 300,000 homes a year. That's not enough, is it? 2030 ban on petrol and diesel car sales. Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, so they're bringing that forward. So Rishi, being a radical conservative, had pushed that back by 5 years, but now they're bringing it forward.
Yeah,
again, so
and
it's 2030 again.
And what else? 24 billion for green initiatives. I thought they scrapped that. So is that back again? an absolute commitment to nuclear and NATO. That seems to be just like a "we're not Corbyn" policy or something. 40,000 more NHS appointments and operations. It's all very like modest and kind of, but then there's stuff hidden in there, isn't there? Eric Corbyn was pointing out some stuff a while ago. I can't find it now, but about there's like the Race Equality Act is sort of hidden in there, which is quite radical. And then Peter Hitchens has been writing about this other document, which seems like the more important document in many ways, which is this New Britain, renewing our democracy and rebuilding our economy. And this has been around. Starmer and Gordon Brown launched it in December 22. But basically what it does is it's the ultimate quangocracy document. It just takes power away from anything that can be elected or reversed, and it just gives it to all kinds of sort of weird bodies. So the House of Lords will be a chamber of the nations and regions, modelled on the German Senate and undoubtedly crammed with nationalists and leftists, according to Hitchens. And there'll be an explicit constitutional requirement to rebalance the UK's economy so that prosperity and investment can be spread more equally between different parts of the UK than it is today. They'll give Labour's Supreme Court the power to intervene in running the economy. A new British business bank is to be given a new remit to promote regional economic equality. And there's stuff about moving everything to Edinburgh, away from London. And there's stuff in there to try and stop this ever being reversed. The idea is you'll bring in all these things. Future parliaments won't even be able to reverse them. So the new rights will cover health, education, poverty and housing. Brown makes it quite clear he wants to stop any future government undoing what Labour has done, saying, in our view, embedding social rights in the Constitution is the most important thing, as it will entrench them against future threats of removal. Judges will be able to overturn any government which sought to unravel Labour's scheme. So this is why Starkey apparently is annoyed that no one's focusing on this either. It's part of this radical, taking things out of the power of people and putting them into weird Labour quangos.
Yeah, it's part of the erosion of parliamentary sovereignty, which was very much the new Labour project. And it took the form of devolution, of the Human Rights Act, of the creation of the Supreme Court. All of these things effectively transferred power away from the House of Commons to unelected officials, quangocrats, judges, and they're just going to Starmer's just going to continue this constitutional reform project. And the most egregious part of it is, I think, the creation of this the replacement of the House of Lords with an assembly of the nations and regions. And it looks as though one of the roles, the constitutional roles of this new second chamber, will be to safeguard the changes that Labour has made and make them permanent. Gordon Brown actually says that in this document. He wants to make the changes Labour is bringing about, the constitutional changes, permanent. So there will effectively be a written constitution enshrining all these changes that have been made, effectively diluting the sovereignty of Parliament down to zero. So it would be impossible to reverse any of the policies that Labour's put in place, in addition to being impossible to reverse any of these constitutional reforms. I mean, effectively, they're making it impossible, they're trying to make it impossible for any successor government to sort of depart from Labour's new social democratic woke government program. It's a ghastly prospect. And I think that is the most serious threat that Keir Starmer poses, and one which has gone completely under the radar.
Yeah, we're basically going to have a Labour dictatorship. You won't be able to get rid of any of this. And that is absolutely terrifying. And it is a reason to vote against them, as Hitchens says. So there's this debate, of course, on the sort of online right, with everyone saying 0 seats for the Tories. And I do want the Tories to be destroyed. And sorry to our Conservative Party listeners, but, there's 0 seats. But then there's also Hitchens saying, no, you're all being foolish. The whole thing is to vote against Labour. Though, of course, in my area, the only way I could vote against Labour, who are going to win massively anyway, would be to vote Lib Dem, who are completely insane and completely on board with Labour, to the point where people are happy to tactically vote Lib Dem, and they're sort of interchangeable. So I don't see how that would help me either. But yeah, this it's very disturbing, and I think we all will probably even regret it. Even if we want to destroy the Tories, we will probably regret when we see that we have a sort of Labour forever government. Though, of course, that's what we already have. Where Blair brought in all these reforms, and the Tories just continued them sort of ineptly, but they continued the whole Blair project. So in a way, it'll be the same. The Labour will do all these permanent changes, and the next government, unless it's someone like Farage, will just continue this stuff. The problem is the left knows how to use power, don't they? They're like, yeah, we'll come in and we'll change everything so that you can never get rid of us. Whereas the right are just like banter, great memes. And that's the problem. We're just not serious about power.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what the Blair and Brown New Labour constitutional reforms essentially did was to transfer power to the deep state, which, as we know, is left wing. So it was a permanent transfer of power from our elected representatives to unelected left wing officials, judges, quangocrats, and that proved to be, as you say, in the last 14 years, irreversible. I mean, maybe with a bit of courage, maybe with fewer changes of prime minister during that period, maybe if Boris hadn't squandered his 80-seat majority, they might have been able to claw back some power from the deep state. But the fact is they didn't. And that process of transferring power to the deep state will continue under Keir Starmer. And he wants to put these various mechanisms in place to make it absolutely impossible to reverse. So we'll have a permanent kind of soft left, managerialist, technocratic ruling class that'll be impossible to get rid of, possibly even as soon as the end of Keir Starmer's first term, but certainly by the end of his second. It'll be like being back in the EU.
I don't think it'll be that
times
soft
10.
either. I think a lot of these left-wing stealth revolution things, they're not that soft. Okay, they're not the old-fashioned communism of these sort of Corbyn types, but they're not that soft. They're usually the complete destruction of the family and things like this, aren't they? But very disturbing and very worrying. And go on.
I mean, but I guess Hitchens' argument, right, is if I've understood it, is that don't vote Reform, vote Conservative, even though I've been slagging off the Conservatives for 15 years. Vote Conservative because we need to do everything in our power to stop Keir Starmer. But that argument only works if you think the Conservatives are better placed to keep Labour out of power than Reform. But now that Reform have overtaken Labour, at least in some polls,
his argument is vote against. His argument is
it's
not
a harder
vote
argument
just
to
be
make.
Clear before he says, "Hang on, you've misrepresented me." His argument is just to vote against Labour, so just vote against them wherever you can.
Okay. I see. Just vote tactically for whichever party is most.
But I'm saying the problem
be,
with that is the Lib Dems are aren't they just as bad? I mean, does that really change anything?
Oh yeah,
they're worse. But does it?
No, they're worse.
Voting Lib Dem, even though they're worse, does that take some power off Labour? Yeah. Maybe. I mean, just because they get fewer seats.
Maybe. I mean, in some cases, in some constituencies, the candidate in pole position to beat Labour will be the Muslim vote candidate. Do you think Hitchens really wants us to vote for them?
Can you vote Green if they're screaming Allah Akbar? And of course, the Greens are far more mental and want to get rid of our nuclear deterrent. So you just go, how can you vote for any of these people who are all mad against Labour? But I do see his point. Labour's going to be a disaster and the end of the country. So I don't know. In my area, it's Labour or Lib Dem are going to win anyway. So you may as well vote Reform to make your point. Although Hitchens doesn't believe in that at all. He thinks that's foolish. He thinks it doesn't make any point and you should just purely vote tactically against Labour. That's his position. And certainly when you read through what they're going to do, there is something in it. What about the Conservative manifesto? I mean, it came out slightly earlier. I'm not sure if we really covered it last time, though. That silly national service idea. They want to boost defense spending to 2.5% by 2030. Well, they'll have to if it's Trump, otherwise they'll just cut us off completely. Protection for pensions with triple lock plus, the extras triple lock, just to completely do everything for old people and not young people. A legal cap on migration, which will fall every year. Okay, stopping the boats by removing illegal migrants to Rwanda won't happen. Abolish national insurance payments for almost all self-employed people. Okay, sounds good. What do you think, Toby? Are you thrilled by the Tory manifesto?
Yeah, it's it's pretty thin gruel. Not much there to set the world on fire. And it just feels like, more of the same, doesn't it? They're not even pledging to take us out of the European Convention on Human Rights. And there was one bit I liked about halving the amount of taxpayers' money spent on external consultants will introduce controls on all equity, diversity and inclusion initiatives and spending. Although it's hard to take that seriously, just as it's hard to take their immigration pledges seriously, because they've been promising to do that since at least 2020 and have done absolutely sweet FA.
I take reforms stuff on that kind of thing far more seriously, that they would actually do it if they got power, of course. They really want to get rid of that stuff. I can't find the exact phrasing on it right now, but they want to get rid of all that kind of thing. And that's just a very token, some people are worried about this on the right. We better introduce controls on equity, diversity, inclusion. But what controls? Very vague, and at least in this part I'm reading, and will they even do it? And what does it mean? Yeah, and not much in there. I mean, national insurance down by 2p. I think we talked about last time. I mean, who cares? I mean, they're not going to win anyway. So what we should all be doing is probably reading that whole Gordon Brown New Britain document, which is very long and boring.
That's right. That is the manifesto of the next government.
I should probably read it in full.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to say that the media, the mainstream liberal media, has been scrutinising and criticising almost all the manifestos, apart from the Labour manifesto, which has gone completely unscrutinised for the most part? I mean, it does feel as though they're kind of, they're sort of piling in to the Reform manifesto, the Conservative manifesto, and giving an absolute pass to the Labour manifesto. And even if they didn't, as you say, that's not the real manifesto. The real manifesto is this Gordon Brown.
Yes, absolutely.
Document.
Absolutely, they have been doing that. And I saw a thing on Sky where they were just sort of talking about how little actually Starmer was talking about borrowing in this, because everyone's worried about, Labour spend too much. He was going, look how low the graph is compared to Corbyn. I know you watched it briefly, but I'm pretty sure he was saying, look how little they're actually going to borrow. It's kind of amazing. It was just kind of just bombing Starmer for, how sort of cautious and costed his manifesto is. So there's been all that. I will say Kay Burley did grill him on that one-on-one interview thing. She did grill him a bit about, why did you say, and this might have been last week, but why did you say that Corbyn was great? Did you mean it? Basically, the sort of, were you lying then or are you lying now? You said Corbyn would be a great prime minister. And you just kept going, well, I knew we weren't going to win. It's like, well, what does that mean? Did you think he'd be a great prime minister? Like, well, I knew he had no chance of winning. He just kept saying that. It was a terrible answer because he got nothing. Much better answer. And actually, Farage said this to me in person at GB. He just said, oh, well, you've got to back whoever the leader is. But Farage didn't even think that was interesting. So why not just say, and he did say, I campaigned for Labour, so I always campaigned for Labour. But why not just say, he was leader of the party, that's how it works. That's just part of the job. It's sometimes you sort of bite your, what's the phrase? Bite your lip, whatever. Why didn't he just say that?
I think he's clearly, rattled and embarrassed whenever this is brought up. He's and he hasn't really kind of got a good line on it yet. Just as it's taken him, it seems to take Keir Starmer about 3 years to work out the kind of optimal, best political line. It took him about 3 years to say, to finally say, women can't have penises. But he took a long time, a painfully long time to get there. And it feels like, the line to take about supporting Corbyn is still a work in progress.
And one thing we should quickly cover, as I, by the way, drink from my bottle with the plastic bit now spiking into me and the lid not shutting properly. And I'm glad I keep mentioning these bottle caps because this section would be very dry without it. But one thing we should mention that's also a bit more interesting is that toolmaker clip. So he said, my father was a toolmaker, and everyone laughed. They just laughed, and that was at the Kay Burley thing because he'd said it so many times. Obviously, was why they were laughing. Then he comes on to GB with Christopher Hope and says, "Well, actually, I take objection to that. My dad was." He goes this long thing about his dad was ashamed to mention he worked in a factory and stopped mentioning it to people. Became a social recluse even because he was sick of the shame of this. And he said how terrible that was. Now, everyone was going, why? How can Starmer be so stupid and not realize why they're laughing at him? But to me, I go, what are you guys talking about? He knows why they're laughing at him. What he's doing is he's reframing it as a victim narrative, and he's just selling it very sincerely. And isn't that called being a lawyer? I mean, isn't that what they do? He's said, like, how can I get out of this? Everyone's laughing at me. He can shame them for laughing so they won't do it again and they'll feel bad. He goes, actually, I don't think it's appropriate to laugh at my dad. He was ashamed all his life. It's classic kind of lefty victim narrative stuff, and it's classic lawyer stuff.
It's essentially a way of reiterating, underlining that his dad was a toolmaker, isn't it? It's like he's trying to kind of play the victim card again. I was a poor, beleaguered, poverty-stricken child. My father was socially embarrassed by his undemanding, low-status job. I mean, it's just trying to sort of make the same point. As you say, trying to play the victim card. I'm sure that he didn't, he must have known why people were laughing. It's just because he's just said it.
Unless he's surrounded by all sycophants and no one said.
But have you seen that Guido Fawkes story?
Reliable. Go on.
Possible. But the Guido Fawkes has a couple of times now run a story saying that Keir Starmer's father wasn't a toolmaker exactly. In fact, he owned a toolmaking factory. Yeah, I haven't seen Labour rebut that yet. Maybe I could have just missed it, but I think it was the proof. I think it's a mischievous story. I don't think it can really be true. But the proof offered on the Guido Fawkes website was a quote from Keir's dad talking about how Keir, during the school holidays or during his gap year or something, worked in our factory, the father said. And so Guido took that as proof that it was his factory. He owned the factory. But you can easily imagine someone saying he came to work in my factory. That was the phrase he used. He came to work in my factory.
Doesn't necessarily mean you own it.
But it could have.
But he's clearly not very working class. I mean, and did you see this other story? How a young Keir Starmer ended up in communist spy files after joining a Czechoslovakian work camp during Cold War. Did you see this one? Yeah, it was interesting. He went over to work on this this Hitler memorial of some sort. Yeah, he went behind the Iron Curtain to restore a memorial to victims of a Nazi atrocity when he was 23 years old. Quite a strange.
It's not exactly.
What did I say? Is that Hitler
memorial. He said he went to work on a Hitler memorial.
I'm a bit tired, guys. I mean,
so like one of the good. He's not a reform party candidate.
In my mind, I meant a sort of anti-Hitler memorial. But look, I worked on a Hitler memorial. Yeah. That was what Jeremy Corbyn wanted at the time. And my dad was a toolmaker for Hitler.
No, I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
That was the only job I could get.
Yes, I was a Nazi. I've changed. The Labour Party has changed. So, yeah, of course. But no, but
Hitler was the leader at the time.
Collective responsibility. And he did fix a lot of roads.
And in private, of course, I stood up to him in private.
Yeah. The point is, you see, these are the best bits of the podcast. I make these mistakes on purpose. So the point is, he was out there doing comedy stuff, Toby, at the height of the Cold War. I mean, what was he doing? I mean, it's a bit weird, isn't it, to be over there? Some people say, he's just a bit naive about how that could be exploited by the communists. But to me, that's just full-on comedy stuff. I mean, there's a weird picture of him as well. I think he is a kind of terrifying ideologue. I think that is correct. I mean, even if we don't believe him, as some don't, that he would not use private healthcare, even if a loved one was dying. Still, he does have has the aspect of the zealot, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. There's something sort of fundamentally missing, isn't there? I mean, that's true of a lot of politicians. They don't seem fully human. It's as though they've had some part of them's been lobotomized. And that's one of the good things about Farage. He does seem,
and obviously none of the politicians that listen to this podcast, we're not saying any of you are not fully human, just to get that in. Anyone who listens to this one is fully human. Toby, so, I mean, that's Labour's manifesto. We've done Conservative manifesto. We've done kind of all the manifestos. I do want to quickly say, before we go to the ad, just actually, one thing Starmer threw out there, not Starmer, Sunak, whatever they're just saying. One thing Sunak threw out there was He's actually broadly pro-assisted dying with certain safeguards. So just in case you thought there was any ethical reason left to vote for the Tories, that last reason is now gone, because people have said to me, I'm so concerned about this assisted dying thing. That's the only thing that can make me vote Tory. Well, that's now gone as well, because both main parties are going to be a death cult. And people get angry when I say death cult, but that's what I think it is.
Have Reform pitched in on that?
I haven't heard, but I'm sure
where they stand on.
I think they'll be
an assisted dying bill.
And I guess, or they haven't talked about it to my knowledge. It's just so disturbing when you see what happened in Canada. But people get very emotional, not because they always have a personal example and they always reply to you angry about that. So I mean, I've already lost the battle on that. But wait and see. I mean, look at what Matthew Parris already explicitly said about wanting to pressure old people to off themselves. And look at the problems we have with an aging population. I don't know. Do you really want to give that power to Labour to just start thinking, well, if everyone just died at 70, this would be a lot easier in many ways. I mean, do you really want to give these people that power?
Well, on the other hand, that really would limit Keir Starmer to just 2 terms. Because
but it's never themselves, 60, is it? When they're offering these people, it's never themselves, always other people.
That's true.
Obviously, I have to run the country, but other 70-year-olds should die. That's what they never say. It's the same with climate people. They never say, I tell you what, I better get rid of myself because there's too many people on the planet. It's always like, no, they always want to genocide everyone else. Yeah. Anyway, is that too strong? But it's true, isn't it? The climate stuff, when people say overpopulation... Maybe that's too strong, but when people say overpopulation, people say, well, why don't you start with yourself, mate? They're not going to, so therefore, they want other people to die in quite large numbers. So who? I mean, isn't that sort of mass murder that they want? What do they want?
Yeah, I think there's something in that. They're certainly completely hypocritical about jet travel. So are we going to discuss these miscellaneous election stories?
Because we want to get our ad into the free section to give our great sponsors value.
So this is a note from Thor. Believe it or not, you can improve your situation remarkably with one choice. Although my client, Robert, sold his company for $1 billion, money was never his guiding force. His guiding value was steady focus on this one choice. Robert had humble working-class origins, but as he grew from engineer to manager to CEO and eventual successful exit, he chose to focus on one thing that most avoid due to their fears or discomfort. What was it Robert prioritized? Communicating. Specifically, Robert invested in guidance for public speaking, storytelling, and presenting throughout his career. Why choose to repeatedly put himself through this process? Because, Robert told me, communication confidence and capability and enjoying it is a number one priority for winning, from initial promotions to his MBO finance deal to competitive pitch wins with his new venture, and then the market differentiation story which led to his eventual acquisition. Now semi-retired, Robert still refers clients to me at all stages of their careers because he knows they'll enjoy growth in confidence and results with me. Choose your communication focus and enjoy it like Robert did. Go to growthpresenter.com for your free confidence call.
All right, thanks to Thor once again, and as ever. So, yeah, as you say, Toby, let's do some of these miscellaneous election stories. Well, one is that Reform overtook the Tories in a YouGov poll, and so Farage was claiming he's leader of the opposition now, and other people saying, well, it's only one poll, and so that was quite a big deal. Yeah. And you felt like, go on.
And he immediately started trolling the Tories by saying, "I vote for the Conservatives. It's a wasted vote."
That's brilliant. Brilliant stuff. So yeah, YouGov poll put Reform at 19%, with the Tories on 18%.
And also demanding now that Reform have overtaken the Tories, demanding that he's included in the kind of A-list leadership debates instead of the B-list leadership debates that he's.
That's what I was about to get on to. Yeah, he said that, and then Tice said it in the Mail on Sunday piece. Richard Tice demands his party get a head-to-head TV clash with Keir Starmer, claiming his party is now more important than the Tories, despite only beating them in a single poll. Yeah, and then Starmer keeps just playing them down and saying it's between Tories and Labour. Last thing he wants is a head-to-head clash with old Farage getting absolutely spanked. I mean, it'd be bad, wouldn't it? I mean, they both come across very badly against Farage, I think. I really want to see that, the three of them.
Yeah, that would be extremely entertaining.
We all want to see it, but Starmer won't do it. Why would he? He'll get spanked. So there was this other...
Starmer might do it because to big up Farage in order to make
I've
Rishi
seen them doing a little bit of that
votes,
early on, but then I think now they're sort of worried about reform and they're now sort of starting to play them down. It's a tricky one. If they start to do better, they will go full attack on reform, which I think they haven't quite done yet. But it'd be interesting to look out for that. And then there was this story about old Boris coming back. So Tories turn to Boris to combat Farage threat. This is what the Tories do, completely out of ideas. I said, let's bring back the guy that we got rid of, which is one major reason our party has been destroyed. Oh, bring him back. And he would be brought back to sign tens of thousands of letters. He would just sign these letters that sort of, what's in the letter? It just warns about reform, basically. If you're thinking about voting for reform and a generation under Labour scares you, there's only one way to prevent it: vote Conservative.
When I read the headline, Tories turn to Boris to combat Farage threat, I thought Boris has planted that story in his old newspaper, The Telegraph. This is going to be Boris's leadership pitch in the aftermath of the election. You know, you've got to get me a safe seat. You've got to parachute me back into Parliament because I'm the only Conservative who can stop Farage taking over the party. That's his pitch. And this headline helps him make that pitch. And they haven't actually turned to Boris to combat Farage in the election at all. Boris is on holiday with his family in Sardinia. And he obviously, he wrote, he before he went on holiday, he dashed off some letter or signed a letter that someone in central office had written. And they're just replicating it, 16,000 times and sending it to, voters in seats they still hope to win. But this isn't Boris kind of riding in on his white charger to save the Conservatives from annihilation by reform. This is just a pure bit of pro-Boris spin,
right?
I'm sure, planted by Boris.
And what about this? That Patrick O'Flynn tweets that gossip is flying around senior Tory circles that David Cameron is planning to return to the Commons in an early by-election in autumn or spring. Then he'll become the One Nation Group's next leadership contender. I mean, I think that's inevitable, given how he got his mug into all those D-Day photos, and given how he's thought of as the Prime Minister abroad, according to some stories, probably placed by Cameron. But don't you think Cameron returning and trying to get back as leader is inevitable?
I'd be quite surprised. I mean, the timing doesn't quite work out. I mean, the Conservatives are going to have so few seats after the general election. Is one of those kind of few remaining Tory MPs going to be willing to surrender his seat so Cameron can run in the by-election and get back into Parliament? It'd have to happen very quickly because the leadership election will unfold as soon as, the general election is over. And it won't last that long. I mean, it might last 3 months, I suppose, but I think Cameron would be hard pushed to get back into Parliament, just as Boris will be hard pushed to get back into Parliament. I think Boris might find it slightly easier than David Cameron. I don't know. I'd be amazed. It'd be very unlikely for someone who's, been Prime Minister, resigned, left Parliament to then come back and become Prime Minister or become leader of the party again. I mean, I don't think there's any precedent for that. It could be wrong. Did you see the story in the Standard by what's he called? Tom Newton Dunn, saying that already 16 members of the Parliamentary Conservative Party have indicated that they're going to run for the leadership after the election. 16. So already it's shaping up to be a 16-way contest. And no doubt more people will throw their hats into the ring over the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's going to be a circular firing squad. Tom Newton Dunn quoted a Tory MP kind of despairing over this 16-way bun fight, saying the problem is all of my colleagues, without exception, think they're Winston Churchill. And I think that's true, incredible, but true. But there was this other story saying that predicting that 5 prominent Tories, were going to have a Portillo moment on election night and lose their seats. So that will reduce the field from 16 to 11 because all 5 of them all fancy themselves as the next leader of the party. Grant Shapps, Penny Mordaunt, James Cleverly, Jeremy Hunt and Robert Jenrick. Apparently, according to the latest poll, and also they've been targeted by this new kind of Labour Lib Dem tactical voting alliance.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was most looking forward to about election night was Boris himself anchoring GB News's election night coverage, in which he could crow at all his enemies kind of floating past him in the river. But turns out he's not going to be anchoring GB News's election night coverage.
Yeah, that would have been good. I mean, he's not even showed up on GB at all, has he? But this is a funny article. I mean, so Victoria Atkins is now in the mix. The favourite remains Kemi Bay. Not so good news for you there, Toby, since you spend a large portion of each podcast bigging up Kemi, which some people comment on. But I like Kemi. But yes, as you say, Mordaunt could lose a seat. There's a funny one here about Jenrick. And Jenrick, to me, is someone who actually seems better. He seems like to actually have a serious plan to tackle immigration. He seems to be the only hope of the Tory party. But it says here, Jenrick is the interesting dark horse, having started off as a moderate and now journeying fast to the right. Another Tory minister says of him, he's an utter shit, but could well come through the middle and win it. It's happened before. Usually if a Tory doesn't like it, that probably means you're probably all right.
Well, Jenrick would be my second choice if it's not Kemi. I think the downside is that he is a very recent convert to the kind of true conservative cause. I mean, he was a Sunakite until fairly recently, and then resigned and then tacked very quickly to the right, particularly on immigration, as you say. But it feels a bit opportunistic, even by conservative MP standards. But there's a Jenrick backer pointed out to me, there's nothing like the zeal of a convert.
So none of them can be trusted, except of course Lord Frost and Esther and Phil and all our friends. But and anyone else who's listened to the podcast, you can be trusted. I like Sweller as well. Yes, we like Margaret. We do like a few. I mean, that's why Connor on my other podcast, The Current Thing, said 6 seats. He's not a 0 seats guy. He's a 6 seats guy because there were like maybe 6 people still who were all right. So, yeah, I think Farage has said there's maybe 50 that align with him. All right, that's that story. And then the other one was the, I think that's mainly all the miscellaneous ones, isn't it? Unless we do the Blair one. I'm just not sure whether to do Blair now or do him later. Should we do Blair now or do him later on? Okay, this is the Blair story. So Tony Blair, a woman has a vagina and a man has a penis. I mean, what a headline. Blair's agenda's really changed, doesn't it? It's just so funny. You go from sort of tough on crime, tough on the cause of crime, education. Got to 2024. A man has a penis and a woman has a vagina. Like, what the kind of dystopia are we in here? And it's just so funny. And even the phrasing, a woman... I'm definitely of the school that says that biologically a woman is with a vagina and a man is with a penis. And that's just an even funnier phrasing. Yeah.
And that's really odd, isn't it? With. Yeah. It's like they're holding it in there. It's like they've got it. They're standing there arm in arm with a vagina or a penis. Who have you come with today, sir? Yeah. I've come with my penis.
Included. It's like an action figure that you buy. The man comes with a penis and the woman with a vagina. It's just very weird phrasing, and that's been the headline everywhere. So a man is with a penis. It's kind of like a woman used to say, "I'm with child." Now it's "I'm with vagina." Yeah, so it's just so crazy. But now that some people are taking this as a victory, that now that Blair, especially those that think that Tony Blair is kind of the behind-the-scenes Dark Lord, as academic agent would put it, the Dark Lord of everything, really, just behind the scenes, pulling the strings, and that really Blair sets the agenda. So some people are saying, okay, this is kind of a clear sign that the Labour agenda will try and incorporate some of these anti-woke tropes or just sane tropes and try and sort of bring back some common sense. But then again, you contrast that with the New Britain document from Brown. You think, will they really? What do you think? Is this significant, Toby?
Well, it's not clear what its significance is because even though Keir Starmer has finally brought himself to say that he doesn't think a woman can have a penis, nevertheless, the Labour Party have said that they're going to reform the gender recognition process to make it much easier for people to legally change their sex. And in addition, they've said they're going to pass a fully trans-inclusive ban on gender conversion therapy, which could easily criminalize parents trying to dissuade their gender-confused adolescent children from embarking on irreversible medical pathways. So, it's all very well to say you don't think a woman can have a penis, but if you're going to make it easier for people to self-certify as a member of the opposite sex and ban any attempt to talk them out of it, even if they're children, then it's
you
pretty
pass this
meaningless,
legislation in sort of stealth while you go on about this in public. Yeah, I mean, that is a danger. I mean, but Blair must look at these people and think, what is all this nonsense? We didn't have this woke nonsense. I mean, he says, although he is in a way responsible for a lot of it, but he says, I'm definitely of the school that says biologically a woman is with a vagina, a man is with a penis. I think we can say that quite clearly. And then he says, this is an interesting part about politics getting itself in a muddle. I don't know how politics got itself into this muddle. What is a woman? Well, it's not a very hard thing for me to answer, really. So yeah, he's just looking at it going, how have you got yourself into this nonsense? And then later he said one other interesting thing that I wanted to say. I've lost it again now. Oh yeah, it shouldn't stop women talking about being biological women. The idea that you can't refer to pregnant women, I think most people think that's completely ridiculous. So at least he has some awareness of that. And then he says, secondly, there may be situations, for example, where you can have people who still have male genitalia, but are in a changing room with women, and women will feel uncomfortable with that. They shouldn't feel uncomfortable, so you've got to protect that. So at least he says the sort of basics of the TERF side, essentially. But like you say, will that actually do anything? I mean, because you just think Starmer hasn't grasped this or refuses to.
Well, Annalisa Dodds has also said that she wants to put better legal protections in place against hate speech directed at members of the LGBTQ plus community, which sounds to me like code for we're gonna lock people up if they don't refer to trans activists by their preferred gender pronouns. So I think Labour is fully woke on all these issues, and they're just cosplaying as TERFs, but in reality,
yeah, or maybe Blair really does have this opinion, but doesn't have quite the influence. Who knows? I mean, it's kind of like Alicia Kearns in the Tories, just ultra woke. You're like, what are these people doing in there? And then occasionally you hear something non-woke, so you're like, well, who is actually running things in these parties? I mean, it's someone like Alicia Kearns is unbelievably woke on every single issue. Should never be anywhere near a party called Conservative. But yeah, you have these rogue. Are they the mainstream of the parties, or are they the rogue people? Well, yeah, they seem to be the mainstream of the parties. So yeah, very weird, very disturbing. All right, we've already done an hour, so should we get on and do the Euros just quickly? Do you want to do that?
So I've one of the things I regret about embarking on my Antipodean tour at this particular juncture. I mean, I don't really mind missing the general election because it's going to be incredibly depressing, but I do mind missing the Euros. I mean, it's like a festival of football that I'm completely missing out on. I tried to watch the first half of England-Serbia. I had a meeting at 8 a.m. in the morning here, and the match started at 7 a.m., which is 8 p.m. your time. So I was able to watch the first half, but my Wi-Fi signal was pretty crap and I only caught glimpses of it. But I did manage to see Jude Bellingham's goal, and I did hear that in typical Southgate style, they went into a kind of defensive crouch after going 1-0 up and only managed to cling on to their lead by the skin of their teeth. Didn't work in the Euro final, Southgate. Why are you doing it again? Anyway, yeah, so what have I missed out on? Have you seen any good games? Has it been exciting?
I've been very, very busy. But
did you watch the England game?
I've not been doing the thing you sort of do as a child of watching every single game. I remember 1994, even though England weren't in it, just watching like all the games. It's always a fun thing to do, but I haven't had that kind of time. But I have been. But I did watch England, And yeah, Bellingham, just on we can talk about the politics in a minute. Bellingham on a football level was incredibly impressive. I mean, he just incredibly, he's big and strong, but he also just seems to float above the whole scene. He can do everything. He scored the goal, running into the box with a perfectly timed header. And also that he gets back and will do excellent passes. He can tackle. There's one moment where he shoulder like chest bumped the guy in a bad way, and you think, don't get sent off, Bellingham, because you're our star player. It would be a classic thing to get injured or sent off. The classic sort of Beckham, Rooney kind of. We don't want to have one. What it reminded me of most, I don't want to show my age here, was Gaza in 1990, because Gaza just had a magic that he was just untouchable. It was on a different level. So there's all that great footage of him sort of, turning around the Holland players, like 3 Dutch players around him who can't get the ball and stuff. And he had that, like, it's just kind of something brilliant about that. You've got all these fancy Italian players and Dutch players together, but then just a Geordie lad who's just destroying them all. There's something beautiful about it. And Owen had it in 98 where he just was so fast and so electric, and his goal scoring was so prolific that he scored the famous goal against Argentina in 1998. Hoddle didn't start him early enough in the tournament, annoyingly, which meant we had to face Argentina. We should have. The fact he didn't even start with Beckham, and he didn't start with Owen was insane. But then he did as the tournament went on. But Owen's a less rounded player, and Rooney had that magic as well, but because of injuries, never fully shone in these international tournaments. So on a football level, Bellingham seems to be kind of like the real deal, and he's going to be the man at this tournament. But yeah, it was an annoying thing. We hung on 1-0. But against a team like Serbia, you do just kind of hold on 1-0, don't you? Because they're always like physical and they're always like solid. You don't tend to smash them. You might get 2-0. But anyway, in case it gets too football-based here, we should also talk about the chants and then the politicians. So the chanting is a funny thing because I enjoy the chanting, and I say I completely welcome it. But you're getting all these tweets of people sort of saying, "Oh, it's embarrassing chanting," and someone's saying, "Surely it's here." Will Pugh, surely it's time to stop singing this stupid song, which was the German bombers one. Pretty sure these Spain fans have forgotten what side their country was on during the war. This stuff ruins what is otherwise hailed as brilliant fan culture. Time to move on. I just said, no, it's not. Don't care. No, it doesn't. Time to sing, because he put them as A, B, C. The point is, and of course, Spain were neutral in the war. Maybe he meant they were politically aligned on the Franco. I might be overthinking it. He may just not have known. I don't know. But this idea, I keep seeing it everywhere. Oh, it's embarrassing. We need to stop. We need to stop doing this. One girl even said, we were asked to stop singing this in a social media campaign. I mean, you were asked by the Germans. I mean, we historically, we don't necessarily do what the Germans ask. That's kind of our thing. And, all right, that is the end of the free podcast for this week. But don't worry, there's still loads more podcasts. If you go to basedmedia.org and sign up for just £5 a month, that's the price of a pint in London or a posh coffee with loads of soy that you don't need. So basedmedia.org for the whole podcast, and you get Peak Woke, Base Department, all these great sections, and you help us keep going, pay all our staff, keep the lights on, keep this brilliant production going at basedmedia.org, and it's just £5. Thank you very much for the support, and we'll see you there.